Welcome, everyone, to this Service Design Pulse special episode. Today, we're diving into the heart of one of the most energizing events in the service design field, the Global Service Design Conference in Dallas. And honestly, this year felt different. Sharper, more practical, more urgent.
Exactly. It wasn't just another conference. It felt like we all stepped into the next chapter of service design, a chapter shaped by complexity, AI, and a whole new set of expectations for consultants and design leaders. And while the conference covered far more than what fits into a single episode, we've tried to bring you the themes and ideas that can make the biggest difference in your work.
If you weren't there, imagine this. 3 days packed with practitioners from aviation, finance, healthcare, logistics, tech, all wrestling with the same question. How do we design when everything around us is changing this fast?
And that brings us to some of our favorite highlights. For me, one standout was the story of Southwest Airlines, showing how immersive mock-ups can literally reveal the invisible parts of a complex service. You don't fully understand complexity until you see a service system reconstructed at life-size scale.
So true. And another highlight was the way multiple speakers addressed organizational maturity, especially the New York Times team. Their message was loud and clear. You can't design at a level your organization isn't ready for. That resonated deeply with consultants in the room.
And of course, the third highlight, the entire shift toward AI and agentic systems, not as buzzwords, but as real, practical transformation tools. The talks from Miro and the Agent Systems keynote showed how AI is reshaping not just workflows, but the designer's role itself.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing was how the themes connected. Complexity, maturity, AI. They weren't separate buckets. They were all pointing to one truth. Service design is evolving into a strategic, cross-organizational capability, and consultants must evolve with it.
Which brings us to today's episode. We're going to unpack those signals and share our own synthesis, the patterns we saw, the insights that surfaced in our post-conference webinar, and what all of this means for your work as a consultant or design leader.
So think of this episode as your deep dive guide to where the field is heading, and how you can position yourself to design, lead, and influence more effectively in the years ahead.
All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the big shift that framed the entire conference. What has fundamentally changed in service design?
The context setting for the conference really began with the keynote from Jesse James Garrett and Peter Merholtz, who described this concept of a phase shift. The key insight was that the era of automatic design growth is essentially over.
That's right. For about 20 years, design was on a steady progression where organizations were growing, pay was increasing, and design was invited to inform strategy. We were succeeding in spite of ourselves. Now we're at a precarious position due to economic uncertainty and AI tools, meaning designers must be intentional about their path forward.
This new era requires designers to shift their focus. Jesse and Peter argued that our value doesn't come from holding tightly to a definition of what design is, nor does it come from authority or even the level of craft. Holding out for perfection is described as a disease that designers have.
Instead, the core message is that value is ultimately in the impact you make organizationally. All effort must be in service of realizing some specific change. This means transforming ourselves from focusing on ideological purity and process adherence to being excellent at business problem solving.
And to achieve that impact, Peter emphasized, we need to research our organization like we research our users. We often have great empathy for customers, but are terrible at having empathy for our colleagues and stakeholders. Understanding what data sources stakeholders trust and how they make decisions is crucial for building influence and realizing impact.
Exactly. It goes back to that idea of trust. You lead by building trusting relationships, and often that starts small. You might start by being useful, even if it's tactical work. This sets up the tension that many designers are feeling right now. The need to deliver measurable outcomes, not just promises based on design doctrine.
Speaking of measurable outcomes, The session on complex services showed why traditional, flat tools fail when dealing with the sheer scale of modern business. We heard from the Southwest Airlines team how service ecosystems are becoming harder and harder to manage.
The current reality is far more complex than the simple service maps and blueprints developed 50 years ago. Today, an organization like Southwest, dealing with policies and procedures, can have manuals 1,800 pages long. And when complexity rises, so does fragility.
That fragility is why many solutions die internally. The challenge is that you have systems where people, processes, and environments must all converge, and you cannot imagine that reality effectively using just a flat journey map.
This is where the talk anchored on full-scale, one-to-one physical mock-ups. The Southwest team uses fake airports, or full-scale physical spaces that people walk through, kiosks, and airplane mock-ups to test complicated ideas.
The purpose of this high-fidelity physical prototyping isn't just UX testing. It's about reducing risk and gaining certainty in big decisions, such as transitioning to assigned seating at the scale of Southwest. Critically, these immersive experiences inspire executives and stakeholders in a way that abstract charts and blueprints simply cannot.
And we saw how this complexity extends into regulated environments, like global logistics, anchoring on FedEx's work. Abhishek Nair discussed how they use service design as a strategic compass to navigate complex regulations.
He highlighted that FedEx was taking a regulation-focused approach, which risked customer experience disparities across regions. The strategic goal was to create a regulation-agnostic experience that is globally consistent, but flexible enough for regional teams to adapt.
To achieve that, they created a future state map focused on regulatory gates, universal compliance steps like customs declaration, and action blocks, templatized, pre-designed workflows for common compliance actions. This is a modular design approach that allows regional teams to plug-and-play components while maintaining a consistent global core. It's a crucial takeaway for any consultant dealing with messy, regulated, cross-border transformations.
The complexity we just discussed is only half the battle. The other half is internal, whether your internal teams are mature enough to adopt and execute complex design work. The talk from Yvonne Tran at the New York Times laid out a highly practical framework using two dimensions: product maturity and team maturity.
And what's fascinating is that the variable for design success is often not where the product is in its life cycle, but where the team is in its maturity level. Team maturity ranges from novice to master gardener, or emergent, established, and empowered.
This framework dictates the appropriate role for the designer. In emergent teams, often characterized by low involvement and reactive decisions, design acts as a translator and process builder, focusing on basic documentation and user-centered practices.
If a designer tries to push big, strategic visions onto an emergent team, they are likely overshooting the readiness. For example, Yvonne Tran shared that their emergent B2B team needed tactical work, like mapping workflows and creating the MVP, even though the designers wanted a longer-term vision. Meeting the moment means diving deeper into that tactical work to deliver value quickly, even if it's not usual service design work.
Conversely, in empowered teams, who have high autonomy and clear metrics, design acts as a strategic partner, driving future vision and opportunity discovery. This is where the highly strategic work, like drafting working principles for AI agents, happens.
The key takeaway for practitioners is that designers must strive to meet the moment, because their impact is proportional to what the product team is ready for. If you diagnose maturity in week 1, you can dictate the appropriate type of design work, which avoids diminishing returns. This diagnostic approach is an essential consultant tool.
Shifting from diagnosis to practice, several talks hammered home that regardless of maturity level, organizational influence hinges on relationships and business acumen. This was a massive theme, particularly highlighted by Zillow and Chase.
Andrea Feynman from Zillow was explicit. Relationship building is a design skill. She found it was a necessary step and not skippable for success in the business context. When she needed to understand frontline interactions for her service blueprint, she had to invest a quarter in relationship building with operations teams, which her design team previously lacked.
That investment enabled her to join an operations project, injecting a service design point of view and connecting that project back to her VP's business goals. This demonstrates how building relationships cross-functionally makes it easier to gain access to work and influence people across the company.
This influence often hinges on using metrics as political currency. When reporting to senior leadership, Chase emphasized reporting impact using quick, measured bullets, because measures are really what move many of our partners. This ties back to the phase shift idea, that measurable outcomes matter most.
Conversely, design leaders must avoid behavior that erodes credibility. Chase laid out the 7 deadly sins of design leadership. The hosts agreed that pride, or craft for craft's sake, is the most critical sin to avoid.
That's right. Pride manifests as being overzealous about process, e.g., insisting on 6 weeks of research, or being elitist. It shows up when designers fail to use the language and context of others. Another critical sin is strategic apathy, or sloth, which is when leaders stop pushing and stay in a comfort zone, waiting for roadmaps they had no input into.
Will Combeams noted that achieving successful relationships requires empathy and patience. If you can understand somebody's context, you have a way in with them, and that's a great blocker for those negative impulses. It requires a mindset shift from being solely a design leader to being a business leader who is a strong design practitioner.
Moving into the future lens of the conference, the entire conversation around AI underscored its urgency and its strategic importance to CEOs. However, Shipra noted that 90% of AI transformations are currently failing because employees don't adopt the tools.
Why are they failing? Because the adoption is often driven top-down through mandates, ignoring the process and the people who are impacted. The message is that AI transformation needs to be intentional, inclusive, and led by service designers, not CXOs.
The future state of AI, as presented by Shelley, is not just generative AI for content creation, but agentic systems. These are goal-oriented orchestrations that are capable of proactive decision-making and executing multi-step tasks without constant human oversight.
This fundamentally changes the designer's role. Everyday people are going to become agent managers. This involves defining goals, setting guidelines for what good looks like, and providing system oversight to ensure the agent doesn't run amok.
Shelley argued that service designers' skills are perfectly suited here. We need to bring our ability to understand people and define workflows, like blueprinting, to this challenge. Furthermore, we must shift our mindset from deterministic thinking, where computers always follow set rules, to probabilistic thinking, embracing uncertainty and managing expectations.
The Miro team provided practical advice on implementing AI intentionally. Service designers need to map their current workflows and intentionally identify 2 things: where AI can exponentially speed up work, like data mining or research synthesis, and where you need to slow down to apply human wisdom and insight.
New design tools emerge from this shift, like prompt sets, the new product requirements documents, and evaluations, the grading rubric for agent output. Ultimately, service designers are needed to ensure that we maintain human care and dignity in the systems we shape, protecting users from the mimicry of care that AI is capable of.
To pull this together, we synthesized the strongest signals from Dallas into 7 integrated insights that define service design's next chapter.
Insight 1. Impact is the only currency. Designers must prioritize organizational impact over craft or identity. Influence is built through a trust bank, delivering on expectations and speaking the language of stakeholders.
Insight 2. Transformation requires bottom-up change. Especially in large or highly regulated organizations, Change cannot succeed solely via executive mandates. We must research the organization, build frontline relationships, and gain influence from the trenches to overcome cultural inertia.
Insight 3. Certainty is the strategic deliverable. In highly complex or fragile service ecosystems, abstract maps are insufficient. Full-scale physical mock-ups are required to generate data, reduce execution risk, and provide the certainty necessary for executive leaders to approve large-scale transformation.
Insight 4. Match design to maturity. Service designers must diagnose the team's readiness, emergent, established, empowered. Deliver tactical work, like MVPs and foundational mapping, to emergent teams to increase their confidence and velocity, rather than immediately pushing for long-term strategic visions.
Insight 5. Design for the invisible user. Growth strategies require focusing on future adopters, or invisible users, like dependents on a shared plan, who are missing from current maps and data. This involves shifting the core metric from customer lifetime value, CLV, to household lifetime value, HLV.
Insight 6. Lead with the North Star and business narrative. To gain leadership attention, stop leading discovery with pain points and research data alone. Instead, lead with the envisioned North Star experience and translate insights into a business narrative that highlights risk and measurable impact.
Insight 7. Service design must orchestrate care and trust in AI. As AI becomes probabilistic and agents take over workflows, designers become agent managers who must embed ethical guardrails and psychological safety. Our uniquely human capacity for care is our most strategic asset in an AI-driven world.
The complexity and velocity of change discussed in Dallas confirm that organizations need service design now more than ever, but they need it differently.
To thrive in this new chapter, consultants and design leaders must internalize a new toolkit and mindset. First, you must prioritize organizational impact over design craft. That means transforming yourself into a business leader who practices design.
Second, complexity, maturity, and AI demand new methods. You need frameworks like the maturity model to diagnose readiness. You need scalable concepts like modular action blocks and immersive mock-ups to manage ecosystem fragility and certainty.
And finally, designers must shift from map makers to transformation partners. This means leveraging relationships as a core design skill and using metrics as the language of influence. If you focus on building capability in others, embracing messy reality, and visibly connecting your work to the business's North Star, you stop waiting for permission and start driving change.
In this conversation, we tried to focus on the insights that create the most value, even within a limited amount of time.
If this episode has given you a clearer perspective or sparked a new idea for the work ahead, then we've done our job.
Thank you for joining us on this Service Design Pulse special episode. We hope these insights provide useful perspective as you shape what's next.